Life is weird.
Super weird.
So, what did we decide to do with our fascination for the strange and unusual?
We made a podcast about it. This is Weirdify. Now,
let's get weird.
And we're rolling.
Oh my God, episode 4. Here we come for you. Aliens. We are coming for you.
Earlians.
Arians.
Episode 4 of Weirdify. I'm Haley.
I'm Amanda. Welcome.
We did it.
We're going to talk about some weird stuff today.
Always.
Buckle up. This is what we're here for.
It is our namesake.
What?
I said it is our namesake.
To talk
about weird things.
Oh, yes.
It's legitimately our namesake.
That threw me. I'm like, our namesake is buckling up. But whatever you want, Haley. Whatever you want.
Yeah. So, hi.
Hello.
I feel like it's been a very long time since we've done this.
It has been a minute. This one's been pushed around a little bit, but that's okay. We're here now. She's happening. I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear what you have in store for me.
It's gonna be a wild ride. So
okay. All right. Let's dig into it.
I'll go first since you went first last week.
I like that.
All right, so the alien story that I chose to do is the story of Betty and Barney Hill.
Okay.
So just some background. Betty and Barney Hill lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Barney worked for the United States Postal Service, and Betty was a social worker. They were both members of the NAACP, which is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, for those who don't know. They were community leaders, civil rights activists, and Barney actually served on the board of the United States Commission of Civil Rights. And they were an interracial couple, which caused quite a stir. Not so much, I wouldn't today, but this was ripe in the beginning of the 60s.
For sure.
So it was not really welcomed.
Okay.
So our story starts on September 19th, 1961 at approximately 10:30 p.m. The Hills were driving back home from Portsmouth from a trip to Niagara Falls, and some articles that I read said that it was their honeymoon, and some said it was just a vacation. But regardless, they were on a trip to Niagara Falls, and they were headed back to Portsmouth. Betty claimed on the drive that she had observed a bright light in the sky, which moved below the moon and then upward to the west side of the moon. She reasoned that she was simply observing a falling star, but was confused since it was moving up.
Yeah, that's the opposite of falling.
Exactly. She urged Barney to pull the car over to A, get a better look since the light seemed to be getting bigger and brighter, and B, so that they could walk their wiener dog, Delzy.
Oh, so cute.
She's like, I looked up online, and she's like one of those short-haired wiener dogs, and she looks like she's really dark, so she legit is like a little sausage.
Oh. That's like what my grandma used to have. She used to have a little
wiener dog?
Yeah, well, no, now she doesn't have one, but she's had wiener dogs basically my whole life. And there was one, like, dark with the little brown eyebrows, little Cassie, yeah.
Yeah, she looked really big, too. Like, the picture online is of Barney and Betty, and Barney's, like, standing, like, couple photo where he has, like, his hand on her shoulder, and then she's, like, sitting there on a stool, like, turned, like, prom pose, and, like, holding this giant-ass wiener dog. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Anyway, so yeah, they pulled over and stopped at a picnic site where, through binoculars, Betty observed a, quote, odd-shaped craft with multicolored lights that was traveling across the face of the moon. She believed that it may be a flying saucer because apparently her sister had claimed that she had seen one years before, and so that's what she believed that she was seeing.
Okay.
Barney reasoned that it was simply a commercial airline passing through Vermont on its way to Montreal, Canada, but quickly changed his mind as the craft rapidly began to descend towards the two of them.
Oh, no.
They got back in their car and began to drive toward Franconia Notch, which is a narrow road in the mountains of New Hampshire, where the object continued to approach the car. Betty said it was approximately 40 feet in length and approximately 1 mile south of Indian Head, which is another mountain.
40 feet? I mean, that's
40
like a good size.
I believe
it's not gigantic, but that's like
yeah,
that's
I believe
good
it was 12
size.
meters, but 40 feet is
I mean,
a lot.
Shit.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
So
I feel like I'm driving in this car with him. I'm trying to like be right here with
picture
it.
it.
And I'm
yeah.
scared.
No, do that. Yeah, it's trippy. It gets trippier. Betty said it was approximately 40 feet in length and approximately 1 mile south of Indian Head, which was another part of the mountain range. The craft rapidly descended on the vehicle and hovered 80 to 100 feet in front of it, and the mass filled the entirety of the car's windshield. Like, just for size comparison. They were approaching it, and it was in front of them 80 to 100 feet, and it took up the entire width of their windshield.
I don't like that.
No.
That's a lot of UFO right there.
Using the binoculars, Barney claimed to see 8 to 11 humanoid figures looking directly at him.
8 to 11?
Yeah, I know. 8 to 11 humanoid figures looking directly at him, and they were wearing what he said were glossy black uniforms and matching caps.
Okay.
Then all of a sudden, all but one of the 8 to 11 moved in unison and walked towards a panel on the wall of the spacecraft, but there was one left that continued to stare at him and communicated a message telepathically to him saying, "Stay where you are and keep looking."
Yeah.
I know.
I know.
No. I remember I said I reread this story and I was like, oh my god, I forgot this is so scary.
Oh my god.
Well, it gets worse, so just buckle up now.
Okay.
Stay where you are and keep looking. He said that wing-like flaps with red lights stretched out from either side of the craft and a long structure had descended from the bottom. Hysterically, Barney told Betty, "They're going to capture us," and he began to drive away at full speed. He asked Betty as he was driving away to keep an eye on the craft, but when she rolled down the window to look for it, she realized it was right above them. The Hills heard beeping and buzzing sounds, which they said seemed to bounce off of the trunk of their car. As she rolled down the window to look for it, she realized that it was right above them. The car vibrated, and then a tingling sensation passed through both of their bodies.
Oh, wait. Okay. I don't like that.
The Hills said that they had experienced, quote, an altered state of consciousness in which their minds had been dulled, and they then experienced a second set of beeping and buzzing, and then they had returned to full consciousness. So they heard one set of beeps and buzzes, and then all of a sudden essentially went to a completely altered state of consciousness, and then were just kind of chilling in like a weird transic state.
Okay.
And then there was another round of beeps and buzzes that brought them back to regular consciousness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, are they in the car this whole time?
They're in the car this whole time.
Okay.
Once they had regained full consciousness, they realized that they had traveled 35 miles south, and their memories were spotty and vague about that entire time that they had traveled. They both recalled making a sudden... Oh, this was interesting to bring it back to our paranormal episode. They said they both recalled making a sudden unplanned turn where they saw a fiery orb in the middle of the road.
Fireballs. They return.
The fireballs are back. All right, so around dawn, they finally arrived home and began to experience sensations and impulses that they could not explain. And then I just listed them. So Betty wanted to keep their luggage near the back door versus in the main part of the home. Their watches never worked again after that night. Barney claimed that the leather strap on his binoculars had been ripped, but he did not remember it tearing.
On his binoculars?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because they were looking through binoculars, remember? And they were able to see it closer? Okay. The toes of Barney's best dress shoes were scuffed as if he had been walking through brush. Barney was compelled to examine his genitals, but found nothing unusual.
Okay.
Yeah, isn't that weird? I read that and it just... I don't know.
He's okay. All right.
So you felt like I guess just needed to.
Let me just take a look.
Yeah, take a little looky through. Make sure everything's
looking great. Let's go.
Everything's
carry on
in full functioning order.
Okay.
The couple took a shower to remove any possible contamination and then tried to draw pictures to recollect what they had just experienced.
Right, because you're gonna get off all contamination. You have no idea what.
They don't know. They don't know what happened.
I think of like anal probing. So. Just take a shower. It'll all be...
They don't know what happened? I mean, you never know.
No, of course. But, like, I feel like that's the classic, typical, UFO anal probing. Let's just take a
good old shower.
Good old shower.
Good old shower.
Clean you right up.
Good old shower. They then tried to draw pictures and recollect what they had both just experienced. Both remembered that they had heard beeping and buzzing, but their memories were fragmented and incomplete. Betty The next day, Betty had went to hang up the dress that she had worn during their drive in her closet and noticed that the hem, zipper, and lining were all torn to the point of the dress was basically just completely ruined.
Wow.
She also noted that there was a pink powder on the dress, but when she hung it out on the clothesline, apparently the powder blew away.
Pink?
Pink.
Okay.
Pink powder.
All right.
That blew away when she hung it out on the clothesline.
Oh, okay.
There were also shiny circles on the trunk of their car that had not previously been there. And if you remember, it sounded like there was vibrating in the trunk of their car. The Hills experimented with a compass, and when they approached the circles, the needle would spin rapidly. And then as they got further away, it would slow down and eventually just stop and work like a normal compass.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. September 21st, Betty telephoned the Peace Air Force Base to report the encounter, but withheld some of the information because she was scared of being labeled eccentric.
Sure.
September 22nd, Major Paul Henderson interviewed the Hills further, and then on September 26th concluded that the couple had just misidentified the planet Jupiter and did not dive further. Yeah.
I'll point Jupiter out to you right now.
I know.
She not here 40 feet
she
long.
Not moving. She not
bright and beautiful.
She not flying above your car.
But unfortunately not above us.
No.
Yeah, with 8 to 11.
Well, I mean, the military is not going to be like, oh, it was absolutely aliens.
So rude of them. It's not Jupiter.
And then they also offered zero assistance after the encounter. So they were just like,
of course.
Yeah, it's Jupiter. You guys are crazy.
Wow.
Okay, bye. Yeah, I know. Betty did some research on her own and borrowed a UFO book written by Donald E. Kehoe. And Kehoe was a retired major and was also head of the civilian UFO research group NICAP, which is the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. September 26th, Betty wrote to Kehoe telling him of their experience, and he passed the letter along to Walter Webb, who was an astronomer in Boston and a NICAP member. Webb met with both of the Hills, and in a 6-hour interview, they shared what they could remember of their encounter. Barney made it very clear that he had put up a mental block and didn't wish to remember some parts of the encounter. Webb stated that the Hills were in fact telling the truth and that things had occurred just as they had reported. Mm-hmm. 10 days after the encounter, Betty Hill began to have vivid dreams, and they continued for 5 straight nights, but after the 5 nights, they never returned for the rest of her life.
Okay.
Betty began writing the details of the dreams down so that she couldn't forget. She stated that she and Barney had come to a roadblock and men surrounded their car. She said she lost consciousness but could recall being led from her car through a forest in the middle of the night by 2 small men. She knew Barney was behind her as the men led her through the forest, but claimed that when she called out to Barney, he seemed to be either in a trance or he was sleepwalking. She said the men were approximately 5 feet to 5 feet 4 inches and wore matching uniforms and caps similar to a military uniform.
That's not that small of men. That's our height.
I mean 5 feet's pretty small. So 5'4" is like close to our height, but 5 feet's kind of tiny.
But I wouldn't think that a guy our height. I'm thinking like little
LGMs,
little alien guys.
LGMs, little green man. She said that the men were approximately 5 feet to 5 feet 4 inches and wore matching uniforms and caps similar to military uniforms, and that they were human-like with black hair, dark eyes, defined noses, blue lips, and gray skin.
Okay. All right. I have the visual.
Okay.
Sink it all in.
Betty said the men walked them up a ramp to a metallic disc-shaped craft where they separated Betty and Barney. Betty protested, but a man called the Leader advised her that if they were examined together, it would take much longer. She dreamt of another man dressed similarly to the others, and she called him the Examiner, and she said that he seemed to have a pleasant and calm manner to him. She said that although the Leader and the Examiner spoke to her in English, it was imperfect and hard for her to understand.
Okay.
The Examiner told Betty that he would be conducting a few exams to see how humans were different from the beings on the ship. He cut off some of Betty's hair, examined her eyes, ears, throat, mouth, teeth, hands, legs, and feet, saved trimmings from her fingernails, and also took a dull blade and scraped some of her skin onto a thin sheet that was similar to like cellophane.
Ew.
And then tested her nervous system by thrusting a needle into her belly button. This caused Betty severe pain.
Oh my god. What the fuck? Oh my god.
I shouldn't laugh. It's awful. I was like, you're weird about needles too, so I was like, she's kind of probably going to lose it at this part. This caused Betty severe pain, but the examiner waved his hand in front of her eyes, and then the pain disappeared.
Oh, great. Lovely. Where's he been my whole life every time I get a shot?
I know. After the exams were done, the examiner left, and Betty was in conversation with the leader. She had picked up a book with rows of symbols, and the leader told her that she could take it home with her. Betty asked where he or they had come from, and he pulled down a chart that was just a map of the stars. As they were escorting the Hills off of the ship, the leader told Betty that she couldn't keep the book after all, and that they didn't want either of them to remember the encounter. Betty yelled back that no matter what they did to her memory, she would one day recall everything. They were escorted back to the car, watched the craft disappear, and then continued on their drive. And this was all in the dreams that she had over the course of 5 consecutive nights. On November 25th, 1961... the Hills were interviewed by the NICAP again. The Hills disclosed that, yes, they had arrived home later than they had planned, but the interviewers concluded that what should have been a 4-hour trip took approximately 7 hours, and the Hills had no recollection of this extra time. It is a phenomenon that I think it's, I call them UFOologists, call missing time. Super creative.
Really original, guys.
Yeah. The Hills went back into the mountains to try to locate the site of the fiery orb and other happenings, but were unsuccessful. However, they did claim to find the abduction site on Labor Day in 1965. Oh. Don't know where specifically that was,
but like they refound where they were.
Where they claimed to be abducted.
Okay.
In December of 1963, the Hills met Benjamin Simon. Simon didn't believe that the experience was real, yet sought to find a deeper cause as to why both Barney and Betty so deeply believed that it had happened. Simon began hypnotizing the Hills on January 4th, 1964. I was going to ask if
they got hypnotized, but I was like, just shut up. She's going to just tell you her story, and if they do, they do.
Yep. On January 4th, 1964, and the sessions lasted until June 6th of 1964. So a little over 5 months.
Okay.
Yeah. So Barney was hypnotized first. His reaction to the hypnosis and recall of the non-human figures caused him severe visible fear and emotional outbursts.
Oh, this poor guy.
Which led to Dr. Simon convincing Barney that he would not remember the hypnosis sessions until he could remember everything without being further traumatized.
Yeah.
Therefore, Barney was consistently under hypnosis for his conscious recall of the encounter.
Okay.
Barney's description of the beings was generally similar to Betty's that she had stated in her dream. He said they were taken onto a disc-shaped craft and separated. Barney's recollection was much less detailed than Betty's, but he said that he had been taken to a room by 3 men. He laid on an exam table where they placed... That's weird. He laid on an exam table where they placed cups over his genitals, and though Barney said that he didn't have an orgasm, he claimed that a sperm sample was in fact collected. They also scraped his skin and examined his ears and mouth. And this part is the part that made my skin crawl when I was researching this. I don't know if it was just the verbiage, but they also touched his spine and were counting his vertebra. And I don't know, for some reason the way that it was written was, I don't know, it's just weird. Well, this next sentence is not great. And then they also inserted a thin tube or cylinder into his anus and quickly removed it.
Oh my God,
so,
why?
But the way that I had read it when I was...
Haley,
I know. Good probing. Well, the way that I had read it was that they inserted a thin tube or cylinder into his anus and quickly removed it, and then it said they touched his spine in order to count the vertebra. So I thought they were like going up his butt and trying to like access his spine and like you know what I mean, which was even grosser. I mean,
I don't think it works like that because
I know, but anatomically it does not. But
yeah.
I just assumed he was like bent over and they were just counting his
shoving
vertebra.
Things up his butt, and, like counting his vertebrae from the inside.
I don't know. They were trying to pull his spine out. I don't know.
Terrible.
I know.
Terrible visual.
I know.
Oh.
Betty's account was similar to her 5 dreams regarding the UFO and were pretty consistent to Barney's accounts. Simon had suggested that Betty sketch the star map that she had dreamt about. Although the map had many stars and was displayed as a sort of hologram, she drew the ones that stood out to her in her mind. The map consisted of basically 12 prominent stars and 3 lesser ones that seemed to form a specific triangle, and they were all connected by solid and dotted lines. Apparently, according to Betty, the solid lines were supposed to represent trade routes, and the dotted lines were just less traveled star routes.
Oh my gosh.
Dr. Simon...
That's fascinating.
I know. I looked up a map, and it just looked a little funky, and it didn't really give too much, like detail about it, or what... I don't know. It just seemed a little funky, but... Dr. Simon believed that a lot of Barney's recollection was based on what Betty had shared with him regarding her dreams. So subconsciously he was just like making this out to be real in his brain, but wasn't necessarily like for sure that that's what actually happened to him.
Okay.
Simon did believe though that the hypnosis had worked, and both of the Hills felt no more anxiety regarding their experience. The Hills returned to their normal lives and talked about the experience with family and friends, but did not look to really share it publicly.
Sure.
Barney Hill died in January of 1969 at the age of 46 due to cerebral hemorrhage. So that was only like 4 years later. I know. And Betty Hill died.
So young. Oh my God, poor guy.
And Betty Hill died in October 2004.
All right.
At the age of 85 of cancer. She claimed to have seen other UFOs later in life and was pretty much a celebrity in the UFO community.
Wow, good for her.
Some psychiatrists suggest that the abduction was a hallucination brought on by the stress. Brought on by the stress due to the fact that they were an interracial couple in the 60s.
Uh-huh.
Both Betty herself and Dr. Simon discounted this, claiming it had nothing to do with the actual experience. But
yeah,
everything was about that back then.
It has to be.
The Hill Abduction was the first widely publicized report of an alien abduction in the United States. Betty Hill's notes, tapes, and other items are now part of a permanent collection at the University of New Hampshire, which is where Betty went to college. The alleged site of the abduction has now been marked as a historical site in New Hampshire. And then the Hills' description of the beings and their craft is what helps shape most of our ideas, when we picture like aliens and UFOs. So that's the story of Betty and Barney Hill and their alien abduction.
That was great. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It went a lot faster than I thought, but it was just a lot of reading because there was a lot of facts.
I'm sad that he died only a few years later. We all die, but I don't know. That just makes me sad.
On a lot of the podcasts that I listen to, when they mention like alien encounters, or they'll even mention like black-eyed kids or something, and then obviously like black-eyed kids, most of the time black-eyed kids are correlated with aliens. And people usually experience, like, they'll usually get cancer, or they'll usually experience, like, weird medical phenomena, or they'll pass away in a really weird way, or they'll get, like, severe cancer, and they were perfectly healthy before. So I wasn't surprised when it was cancer and cerebral hemorrhage, just because weird things happen. But, yeah. Anyway,
wow.
I know. Pretty trippy.
That's crazy. Okay, so she died in 2004.
Mm-hmm. So she was 85, I think I said,
right.
and he was 46.
That's so young.
Yeah. So they must have gotten married fairly late in life, I think, especially if they were driving from Niagara Falls for their honeymoon.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Oh, my gosh. Well, good job. I loved it. That was great.
I'm stoked to hear yours, especially since there's apparently so much to it.
I mean, I barely scratched the surface.
I know. It's kind of scary, though, to me.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it's
truly.
Nervous.
Well, I'm going to grab Alex to tell his story before I tell mine as a nice little brief intermission.
Yes.
Let me grab my husband. Hold, please. Oh, husband. Welcome to Weirdify, Alex.
Wow.
Welcome.
Should I put the headphones on?
Yeah.
Sure.
You'll be able to hear yourself a little better.
You might as well make it official.
Am I the first guest speaker?
Yes, you are.
I guess so, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
Nate
honored.
wrote a little, thing that Amanda read.
All right. Wow. I'm honored. Thank you, ladies.
Yay!
This is kind of a thing.
Special guest.
I was just laying down on the bed, and now it's like, hop two.
Hop two.
Perform.
You're on.
Okay, well, if you didn't know, before each episode, the girls do a little research, actually a lot of research. So I did the same for mine. Amanda asked me to share a UFO / extraterrestrial story that I experienced about 10, 12 years ago now. And so I wanted to give a little bit of background to that. I'm a very mechanical guy. I'm a very logic guy. I love the arts, and I love the ability to express your freedoms. But I also believe that everything can be related with math and science. So I wrote some numbers down to express how crazy of a phenomena this could be if it was related to numbers. So probably like in 2011, I was hanging out at a friend's house. It was after school, so we were hanging out for a while. It was probably like, 6, 7, 8 o'clock. It was dark. And, like everyone else was like hanging out, smoking weed, drinking, yada, yada, yada. and I wasn't into that, at the time, and it didn't really appeal to me. So I can say, at the time being, I was completely sober when I saw this. And so we went to Helix High School, which is in La Mesa, San Diego, California. And his house was about, a block away from the high school. So the area is kind of in a valley. And if you look out south, you're looking up into a hill. And it's called the East Ridge Hills and East Ridge Housing, whatever you want to call it. So if you look up into those hills, there's a great point of reference. So you can see each individual house as a silhouette. Like, okay, there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4. And they're big houses. They're like 3 or 4 bedroom houses. So you can very easily, kind of compare the hillside to your normal references. Well, we were hanging out in the backyard, and I saw an orange glow. And it wasn't sharp. It didn't have defined lines. It was like a candle, if you will. And if you were to hold up like a M&M, at arm's length to your eye, it was about that size. It was a very small glow. And then immediately it grew into a giant big glow, like maybe the size of a basketball, like holding right up to your face. And then it went back to the size of an M&M. And I can see, with, like I was saying, those houses as reference, you compare it to this house and it's like, man, that got huge, that got small, that got huge, that got small. And then it jetted over, to like 3 miles out west. So like I said, I did some numbers. So like 3 miles out west or 2 miles out west is the College Grove area. And in order to travel, it jetted there in like 2 seconds or maybe even a second, really, really fast. In order for it to go from where those houses were to where I presume it, hovered for the next second, we would have to be traveling at about 7,200 miles per hour. And to give you some frame of reference, the fastest aircraft, which I'm a huge fan of, is the SR-71 Blackbird. And that can travel at about 2,200 miles per hour. So the difference is about 5,000 miles per hour faster. So as far as we know, there's not anything that can be traveling that fast. Now, something else to take into consideration, it was hovering. So it was going from a standstill to a rapid acceleration to a stop again. And the next fastest thing that could do that is a helicopter. And the fastest helicopter that can do that is Sikorsky X2, and that can travel at 300 miles per hour. So just take those numbers into consideration. This is extremely fast. To jet over that amount of landscape and that amount of time, no machine that we know of can do that. So, the next logical thing would be think, well, it has to be light. Obviously, I was seeing light. It looked like light, so it had to be light. That's the only thing that can travel in that amount of speed. Well, like I said earlier, if you look at a laser, it's very sharp and it's very defined. This wasn't like a laser. It was soft like a candle, and it gave you like a really warm, fuzzy feeling, if you will. So to think that a candle, what it actually reminded me of when I first saw it was like, those Japanese lanterns that you light off. And, you put them like in a little,
and they float.
Yeah. It's like they put it in a lunch bag, and it floats off and it's like, oh yeah, ceremony. That's what it reminded me of. So it gave that persona of a soft lit fire, but it had the ability to move at this crazy speed and this crazy agility. So it shot from one end of the sky to another end of the sky and then back, and it continued to grow and shrink. And then it kind of did like this figure 8 thing where it moved throughout the sky. And then, it came to a normal size where it was like maybe if you were looking at it like at arm's length, it was like 4 or 5 inches. And then within, a millisecond, it just sped so fast out into the sky and was gone, just gone. It just left a trail of nothing, just boom, out of here. And
it didn't just evaporate, right?
It just
watched it
just like completely took off into space, just completely gone. It was such a surreal thing because, like I said, I looked at it as a very logical standpoint where I was like, what could that be? And you just have a moment where you're completely baffled, where it's like, there's nothing really I can compare this to. There's nothing in my day-to-day life that I've seen that's like this. Was it a UFO? Yes, absolutely it was a UFO. It's an unidentified flying object. Right. I could not compare anything to it. The most modern planes, the most stealth planes, fastest helicopters couldn't even compare, at least that us as a society knows about. Maybe there's some secret government plane that can do that, but it wasn't there. So what I saw was something that made me think a little bit more openly about what the possibilities are in this atmosphere and this universe, and something that could push the limits of your imagination a little bit more than normal. It was, very eye-opening. I don't know. It definitely gave you a different perspective of what you think reality is.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I don't know. And, it's like you tell it and it doesn't really get the point across. But when you're standing there and you're looking at the sky and you see this orange thing bolt from one end of San Diego to the, coast of San Diego, it's like, wow, that is moving fast. It's like, and then, it starts changing size and it's like, wow, what does that? And then it's just gone, and it was truly a remarkable experience.
Did any of your friends that you were with?
Yeah, so to prove I'm not crazy.
Well, you're married to me, so there's that, honey.
Well, to prove I'm not crazy, 2 other friends of mine were hanging out in the yard, and they saw the exact same thing, and they're like, "What the fuck was that, man?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Like I said, coming from a logical background, you immediately want to point something to it. It's like it was, A, B, C, D, but there's no A, B, C, D. It's like it's whatever. So yeah, it's a UFO. It's an unidentified. It's literally
everybody thinks like UFO means aliens, flying saucer. It's like no, it's if you can't identify something in the sky.
Literally
a UFO. Literally turn out to be a plane.
No,
if you don't know what it is,
a weird ass bird.
UFO.
Well, so exactly. at the time, that East Ridge housing complex that I was talking about, it wasn't completely developed yet. They were still constructing it. So I thought, maybe like some constructive equipment went off, or, maybe there was a fire, or maybe there was this and that. And I Googled all that. And even the next day when I rode my bike to school, I rode through that neighborhood because I could cut down through that neighborhood and then cut down to the school. And there was nothing, all the houses were finished. There was no construction equipment. There was no fires. There was no this and that. So, to have a candle or to have a bonfire in the sky, miles up in the sky above this neighborhood, and then being bolted from one part of town to the other part of town, it was just too much weird shit to add up to make logical sense of. Yeah.
You can't make sense of.
No, you can't make sense of it.
Illogical, like out of our own.
Right.
No.
Of what is.
Yeah, it was a complete UFO. I didn't see any aliens. I didn't see any, green spacemen. No, none of that. But it was just a completely weird flying thing.
Well, thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, absolutely.
With us and our wonderful listeners, honey.
Yeah, I never have really told anybody about it, and
so why not start with the
Why not start with the world? Well, it was good for me because, I had to look up these numbers and kind of compare it to, and it's like, man, yeah, so if it did go from this part of town, it's like, shit, it would have to be traveling at like 10,000 miles an hour. That's fucking fast. That is really fast.
That's so weird.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I hope you have fun with the rest of your podcast, girls. Thank you for letting me be your first guest speaker. Yeah, well.
We started it off with a bang.
Well,
Gentlemen, that's my husband.
All right.
Wonderful angel human.
All right, everyone, keep listening to this. What is it called?
Oh, no.
I'm just joking.
Oh, no.
Yeah, keep listening. I want to retire early. All right, bye-bye.
Sorry if I was generating so much. Did you feel like my heat just radiating?
Oh, I'm radiating heat also.
Oh my gosh, it's so warm in here.
Yeah. Let's talk about our sweaty creases for a moment.
about your sweat, Haley.
I can't help it. There's so much heat in this room.
Oh, man.
That was a nice surprise.
Yes.
When I mentioned something at dinner, did you already plan on having him say it? When I was like, Alex isn't going to say his story?
No, I didn't.
Oh. That's even better.
I was
surprise.
like, you're home. Do you want to tell your story? He's like, yeah. I was like, dope. Okay.
Go, girl. Get
my
it.
story that I am truly, truly, truly barely going to scratch the surface of, only because there are so many rabbit holes you can sort of go down with this one that there's kind of no stopping point, if you will. So I'm going to do the Roswell Incident of 1947.
Okay.
You've heard of it, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why do you look like...
No, I'm just ready.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the Roswell incident, as it's often referred to as, is obviously an infamous UFO crash. So infamous, in fact, that there is a museum partially dedicated to it. Oh, she already knows. She's nodding her head.
Sorry.
Which I will circle back to later. Over 70 years later, there is still a ton of debate on what actually happened here on this day. And frankly, seems to be more questions than answers, with many conspiracy theories that can make you go from one conclusion to another. So basically, it starts on June 14th, 1947.
Sorry, I'm really into it. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
I don't mean to stare at you like such a beaver.
I love it, but I am almost like, does she want to say something? Like,
nope.
Okay.
I'll say something if I want to say something, trust me.
All right. So it starts on June 14th, 1947, which is kind of somewhat around where yours was, too. Yours was in like...
It was in the 60s.
The 60s? Yeah, okay.
And it was September, but that's fine. It's cool.
It's worth mentioning that the world was in a bit of a UFO craze, so I'm throwing that out there. This was also to kind of just set a tone, the start of the Cold War. So tensions were very high with the Soviet Union. A sheep rancher by the name of Mac Brazel is driving on his acreage when he drives past a wreckage site and sees debris everywhere. He describes the debris as, quote, a large area of bright wreckage made up of rubber strips, tin foil, rather tough paper, and sticks. I also read that, like in another place, not a direct quote from him, but it was a shiny metallic foil that could not be bent no matter how hard you tried. The wreckage covered an area approximately 3/4 of a mile and a couple 100 feet wide. He obviously had no idea what to do with this, but he decided to sit on it for a few weeks and kind of just mull it over. He took some stuff back to his house. He's like,
why not?
You know what? Let's just take it back. Him and his family were like, what do we do? We're going to take them back to the house. So he basically then decides to collect what he can. Obviously, this is a huge crash site, so he collects what he can, and he drives it to Roswell, New Mexico, he was north of Roswell, like 30 minutes or so. So he drives it down to Roswell, New Mexico on July 7th, where he hands it to Sheriff George Wilcox, who is equally as confused. What the heck is this stuff? So from there, it basically gets passed down to like the military Air Force, who kind of takes over the whole thing from there. They investigate the wreck site, the debris. They send Major Jesse Marcel to the site to investigate. And after hours of digging through the debris, he reports that they have a flying saucer. The site was then completely closed off. Like, nobody could come and go, not even the rancher, not his family. Nobody was allowed in until they totally cleared all of the wreckage. Marcel is quoted saying, "I have seen rockets, both experimental and weather balloons, but I have never seen anything like this. I guess the debris seemed weightless, but was basically totally indestructible." So somebody in the military is like, "I have never seen anything like this." Like,
except like Captain America's shield.
Yeah, and
which is so light he can carry it, but it's the most like strongest material.
Exactly. Maybe that's what they found.
Maybe there's some truth to it. Maybe.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, hey, they had to get inspiration from somewhere.
So on July 8th, July 7th is when he drove it down and gave it to Roswell. July 8th, there was a press release issued by First Lieutenant Walter Haut that basically said, "We have a flying saucer in our possession," that blows my mind that there was a press release issued that said, "We have a flying saucer." So the local paper titled it.
Do that now.
No.
At all. They wouldn't say anything.
That frankly just blows my mind that was like, everybody was like, "Yep, cleared, good to go, flying saucer, great.
Print it on out.
Let's go."
Run the headline.
So we're going to run the headline of the local paper titled RAAF, which is the Roswell Army Airfield, "Captures Flying Saucer on Ranch in Roswell." Everyone was hyped until the very next day, where another press release issued stating that it was a high-altitude weather balloon. This one titled, "Army Debunks Roswell Flying Disc as World Simmers with Excitement." Sadly, the second press release basically killed all the interest in this event until the publication of the Roswell Incident, such an original name, in 1980 that totally re-sparked talk surrounding this event. This is a book that's co-written by Charles Berlitz, who also authors The Bermuda Triangle, and the UFO investigator William Moore. Their writings are based off of over 90 interviews and findings from former nuclear physicist Stanton Friedman, who actually interviewed Marcel, the major who was basically like the first official person to actually see this wreckage. And claims that he still believes to this day that what he saw was from out of this world. In fact, Mac and his family, who went out to gather debris, also claim, I know I've already said this, but that the material had super strength and looked nothing like a balloon or like balloon material thereof. Not to mention that Mac himself has claimed that the military coached him on what to say and what not to say about the incident, which of course sparked many other conspiracy theories on all of it. So, I mean, and that is kind of where it's like you could go down so many rabbit holes on this. So I'm kind of just going over
the general,
the gist of it, because there are a credible ton of books. So many books have been written about this, which is crazy. Documentaries, TV shows, interviews. Like, this is, everybody's like done their research on this. So much so that the Air Force actually ultimately had to do their own investigation decades later, because the UFOologists promoted conspiracy theories that the military had discovered alien bodies and were covering it up. Like, obviously a UFO landed, there was alien bodies, the military just swept it right under the rug.
Was there proof of bodies? Did they find bodies?
So there's not proof of anything.
So it's just open-ended at this
point? Because the military took it over basically the next day. Well,
80 years?
Roughly years. So, I mean, there's no actual concrete hard evidence except for basically the first-hand accounts that were there to basically say this is what I saw at the wreckage site, right? I mean, they interviewed in the book, The Roswell Incident, over 90 people who claimed to have pertinent information, claimed to have seen something. There was a lot of UFO sightings in Roswell around that time as well, so people came forward to kind of talk about their experiences with that. But there's no hard evidence of like, yes, there was aliens, which, I mean, if there was, this would probably be a different conversation.
Yeah.
So they launched their own investigation because everybody was like, where's these alien bodies? So the military basically published a report actually saying aliens observed, quote, in the New Mexico desert may have been anthropomorphic test dummies that were carried aloft by the U.S. Air Force high-altitude balloons for scientific research. They also suggested that you could have been seeing pilots parachuting down. So just use your imagination. It's not aliens, though. It's definitely not aliens. Though, and I don't I don't know what this means, but I read this somewhere. Shortly after the incident, there was a mortician by the name of Glenn Dennis who claimed that the Army had requested airtight coffins and was like somehow connected to this incident.
Yeah.
But I don't know
who else needs airtight coffins? You don't need it for Grandma Doris.
Grandma, you don't get no airtight container. Listen, Grandma. Okay, I'm trying to get a
some
spot.
basic ass Tupperware.
You are not getting no airtight coffin. That's expensive.
Yeah,
Do you know how much a funeral costs in the first place? Dang, Grandma.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, so somewhere along the lines, the Army had requested airtight coffins.
Did it say how many and what size?
Oh my God, no.
I'm just curious.
Well, I only read that on one source.
Oh.
But it was kind of just an interesting little fun tidbit. So I thought I'd throw it in there. Tidbit. Because there was still so much speculation over the cover-up, they released classified information in 1994 that countered what they'd said about the weather balloon actually being what had crashed. And they said what had crashed was actually a spy balloon that was part of a top-secret mission called Project Mogul to detect and monitor tests done by the Soviets. So they had said, oh, it's a weather balloon because they didn't want anybody knowing that it was this like top secret spy balloon at the time that really crashed.
Right.
And we're trying to creep on the Soviets and make sure they're not getting an edge on us.
Right.
So they're like, no, that was going on. It's all declassified. It's all good. It was totally a spy balloon. So they're just like, it's a flying saucer. It's a weather balloon. It's a spy balloon. It's a bird. It's a plane. You take your guess, ladies and gentlemen. So I am currently reading the book Area 51 by Annie Jacobson, which is seriously an amazing book. I'm about halfway through, and I'm really enjoying it. Her research is incredibly meticulous. Not that it's all about this, but that she does touch on this a lot.
Right.
It's about Area 51 and just kind of the secrets that took place there, which do play some of a role. And, you know,
a lot of good things.
Yeah, a lot of people think that potentially the saucer and the aliens were taken to Area 51 and just basically kept there for further research. So she kind of goes into a little bit of that in her book. She also noted that there was Russian writing on the inside of the craft, which I couldn't really find much else about, but was really, really fascinating about. So it led me down a slight rabbit hole of conspiracy theory that it was actually the Soviets that sent this aircraft and that they had put kids in the aircraft and that they basically made them look like humanoids. Like what was found in there was human-esque, but not totally human.
But there was stuff found in it.
Is what some people believe.
Oh, okay.
And that I kind of feel like there had to have been something.
Yeah.
Right? But it was humanoid, so probably had arms and legs and maybe big eyes or something like that, but not
too, but not exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. So there is basically a whole conspiracy theory that Russia sent.
Right.
Or the Soviet Union sent.
Right.
Yeah, with kids. Oh, which is awful.
I know.
There have also been a few hoaxes as well. There was an alleged autopsy film that was released in 1955 that it basically was the dissection of one of these alleged aliens captured from the crash. Right. The director did later admit that it was a fake, but it's just so interesting that there's so much sparked from this, one sort of incident. Yeah. CNN actually did a poll in 1997 that revealed that most of America believes that aliens landed here that day, and whatever happened is being covered up by the U.S. government.
Sure.
Time magazine posted their own article on this in 2015 as well.
2015? Wow.
I was just reading it the other day. The incident has also changed Roswell's fate. It's now known for its UFO history, and basically in 1947, it marked its landmark of, yes, we are a UFO town, and it's just sort of forever been known for that. They hold an annual UFO festival, which I honestly feel like would be really fun to go to.
It would probably be
like, it would
fun.
be interesting.
Yeah, it would be a great people watching.
Sure, for sure. I mean, but I think it could be super fun to go to something like that.
It would be really interesting.
I mean, you know how I just love to stare at the sky, so the fact that there's other people who to do that.
They do. There's a whole town dedicated to it.
Hey, yo, where you at, UFO Festival? Coming at you. So then circling back, it is also the home of the International UFO Museum and Research Center, which is co-founded by Walter Haut, which is the guy who actually gave the initial press release stating that it was a flying saucer.
Right.
Until his death in 2007, always believed that aliens landed here on that day. It's a non-profit corporation, and the UFO Museum is organized to inform the public about what has become to be known as the Roswell Incident, as well as other aspects of the UFO phenomenon. The corporation's mission statement includes the goal to educate, not convince, the general public about the Roswell incident and all aspects of the UFO phenomena. So it's fucking crazy to me that there is legitimately a whole place that's dedicated to just educating people about this whole incident. Like, after all these years, it's not just some little thing. It's like whole town.
Fame, man.
Yeah, the whole town is
dedicated.
Yeah. So I'm truly barely scratching the surface on this, but that's kind of the gist of sort of what happened. And you can watch all the documentaries, read all the books and all the TV shows, and, formulate your own opinion about whether you think it's a cover-up or it truly was a spy balloon. But something weird happened, and it definitely seems like there's some shady shit going on.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Anything that, just
that our government's involved in.
Honestly, yeah. It would be so fascinating, yet so terrifying to see all of the stuff that they have in Area 51. Actually, when we were flying over Vegas a couple weekends ago, I just was thinking, I was like, I'm pretty sure it's in, like, Nevada. Mm-hmm. So I'm like,
I doubt you can. You can't fucking fly
you can't
over
see it. But there was like
though.
one section of like this really tiny. It wasn't an airport, but it just looked like there was like a gas tank and maybe like a tiny little like water. It wasn't really a tower, but like a water tank. Mm-hmm. And there's just so many hills and just desert and just mountains, and there's like hills and stuff that you can't see the other side of. So it's like there could be a door on the other side, but you can't tell.
Oh
and I mean,
gosh.
I'm sure that they wouldn't have like commercial flights like flying over it anyway, but. It just got me thinking. I was like, there's so much.
I mean, honestly, if you're curious or interested, I highly you can use my Audible login. Not sponsored, but wish we were. You can totes use my Audible login and read it. It is.
I have credits to use.
It is.
So I might just do
me
it.
too. It is almost like skin crawling how much secret stuff goes on. I mean, and she's referring to a lot of the stuff back in the day, but even still, that was kept secret from the public, classified.
Yeah,
blah, but. Yeah, it's like, no, nobody gets to know about this. And even the people who work on Area 51, every single person is on a need to know.
Yep.
If you don't need to know, you don't know.
Yep.
And only if you need to, even some of the pilots that are flying these crazy missions and these,
they could have
spy
stuff
planes,
like cargo.
SR-71. They don't even necessarily have all the information. Your information is you are flying this plane,
flying
and
from
here are
point
your
A to point
coordinates.
B. Don't ask questions. Have a nice day. You're getting paid.
Ask questions, and you don't get to play anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really good book. Actually, Alex's friend recommended that book and kind of this. Mm-hmm. He's like, read this book, see if it sparks interest. And I was like, okay. And then, a couple chapters in. She's so thorough, too. I mean, it's, for me, I'm not super into all the history, facts, and details and names and da-da-da-da. Mm-hmm. But it's, even if you're not into that, I mean, and I'm not, it's just such an amazing read. And I'm, like I said, I'm about halfway through. So good. Highly recommend.
Very good.
Highly recommend. So yeah, that
was fun.
That's more or less.
Yeah, I had known
the Roswell incident.
I had known about Roswell.
Yeah, for sure. I honestly really hadn't heard of it before this.
Really?
But it's so infamous. I kind of figured, well, there's a good chance she's probably heard of it.
It's okay. No, it was details that I just needed a refresher on.
Sure. Yeah.
So still just as fascinating.
Yeah.
And still just as weird.
Mm-hmm.
But. That was a good one.
So weird.
It's weird to try to wrap your head around some of the stuff.
I know. Well, and then as I'm reading this book, and like I'm saying, there's just so many secrets. And then she talks and she's like, da-da-da-da-da, this fact declassified in 1992. And it's like, oh, declassified? Oh, why was that classified? So many secrets. Secrets.
Is she reading her own audiobook?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I love when authors do that.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Very cool.
I liked it. That was solid.
I liked yours too.
Very scary.
This was a fun one. I liked this.
This was a good one. I was stoked for this one. I'm glad that there wasn't any more sticking of stuff up butts.
Yeah, no, seriously. Nothing I read, at least in mine.
I was like, it was a nice little, we're going to end on a sort of positive note, I guess.
Yeah, you definitely led the way.
I did.
Yeah. Well,
that was fun.
As Haley just turns into a puddle.
You can talk about my sweat. I
It's
don't need
there.
to talk about it. They're very well aware it's there. This little room gets so warm.
I know.
But it's okay. We work with what we got.
We do our best.
Yeah.
For you.
If you guys have fun stories like Mr. Alex, that was a wonderful first guest. I'm so thankful that he was our first guest because he's just the best.
I would agree.
Yeah, if you have fun stories, please feel free. And by feel free, we mean
please.
For the
We're
love
begging
of God.
you.
Please, we're begging you. Send us all these stories because we're really enjoying researching these stories and finding out more.
Not just aliens, if this is like the first episode you're turning into.
Yeah.
We enjoy all the weird things, true crime, paranormal, whatever strange thing.
Aliens, medical, even just personal stories that you just don't really know how to classify it.
Exactly.
Like, there's so much unexplainable or even explainable stuff that happens to all of us that it's just so fascinating to listen, especially from like hearing other people's accounts of everything.
Well, and like Alex was saying, when there's not, he's very logic driven, and when there is not a scientific explanation, and he's an airplane mechanic, like he's like nothing moves that fast.
Yeah, you're just dumbfounded, and you're just like, I can't chalk it up to anything else.
At the time, he wasn't, but he can look back now, with the knowledge that he has and go, what the fuck was that?
Yeah, exactly. And for him to say it, you're like, all right. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I'm sure other people have told other stories or know of other stories.
Exactly. Yes, please.
Just
if you
as
have
trippy.
Strange alien UFO stories, we want them.
Oh, absolutely.
Bad.
We want it all wrapped up in a nice little bow.
Please email us at weirdifypodcast@gmail.com.
That's it.
You can also find us on Instagram at Weirdify Podcast.
Yeah.
And Instagram.
It's all at Weirdify.
Find us there. Yeah. Follow us, like us, talk to us, email us. We want to hear from you.
I feel like there's something else that we forgot. There's just our website. But
weirdifypodcast.com. That's the one.
That is the one. Yeah.
We're going to struggle through this for probably many more weeks. Thanks for struggling with us, folks.
Yeah,
we're doing our best. Yeah. We have no idea what we're doing. We're trying to pretend.
We're just going with it.
We're just going. We're going. Yeah. Please go with us.
Anyway, until next time, please remember to keep
it weird.